The rain fell in thin silver lines as the city breathed through another tired night. A flickering streetlight hummed above a quiet bus stop where Ethan Carter stood motionless, his jacket soaked, his shoes worn thin at the soles. In his hand were 18 crumpled dollars, his last. Across from him, a stranger sat shaking, hungry eyes fixed on the ground. Ethan's stomach ached, not just from hunger, but from the choice pressing hard against his chest. He didn't know it yet, but this moment would change everything. Before the story pulls you further in, tell me, where are you watching from right now? It's incredible how one quiet act can travel across borders and hearts. Drop your city below. Let's remind ourselves how connected kindness still makes us. Ethan had not planned to be out that late. His 6-year-old daughter, Lily, was supposed to be asleep back home in their small rented house on Maple Street. He had worked a double shift at the warehouse, lifting boxes until his arms trembled. The paycheck still hadn't cleared. The fridge at home held half a carton of milk and a few slices of bread.
This isn't right.
That $18 was meant for gas and maybe eggs. But the stranger, he looked worse off than Ethan felt. Mid-30s maybe, unshaven, eyes hollow like they had forgotten how to hope. His hands shook as if the cold had settled inside his bones. "You okay?" Ethan asked softly. The man didn't look up. "Haven't eaten since yesterday." Ethan swallowed. He thought of Lily's small hands wrapped around her stuffed bear, the way she trusted him to always make things okay. His heart tightened. Still, his feet moved on their own. He held out the money. "Take it," Ethan said. "Get something warm." The man stared at the bills like they were unreal. "I can't." "You can," Ethan interrupted gently.
We don't have much time.
"Please."
This isn't right.
The stranger's eyes filled.
It's the only way.
He took the money with trembling fingers. "Thank you," he whispered. "You didn't have to." Ethan forced a small smile. "Yeah," he said. "I know." He walked home in the rain, gas tank light glowing, mind racing with worry. That night, Lily asked for dinner, and Ethan made toast, cutting it into hearts to make her laugh. He told her stories until she fell asleep. When the house grew quiet, he sat alone at the table, head in his hands. Morning came too fast. A loud engine sound jolted Ethan awake. Then another. And another. He looked out the window and froze. 5 black SUVs lined the street, their engines humming low.
Take it.
Men
We don't
in
have
dark
much time.
suits
This
stepped
isn't
out,
right. I can't
scanning the
just-
house
You have to.
like it
It's the
held
only way.
secrets. One of them approached the door. Ethan's heart slammed. His first thought was Lily. "Stay in your room," he whispered to her, voice shaking. The knock was firm, controlled. Ethan opened the door slowly. "Mr. Ethan Carter?" the man asked. "Yes." "We need to speak with you." Ethan nodded, fear crawling up his spine. Neighbors peeked through curtains. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy. Inside, the suited man looked around the modest living room. The chipped table, the worn couch, Lily's drawings taped to the wall. "You helped someone last night," the man said calmly. Ethan's breath caught. I didn't do anything
Take
wrong."
it. We don't have much
The
time.
man
This
shook
isn't
his
right.
head.
I can't just...
"No,
You have to.
you
It's
didn't."
the only way.
He paused, eyes softening. "You helped the right person." Ethan stood there, confused, heart pounding, as the man reached into his jacket. And before Ethan could understand why his hands were shaking again, the door closed quietly behind them, sealing the moment that would soon unravel everything he thought he knew about sacrifice, fate, and how far one small act of kindness could truly go. The man didn't pull out a badge or a weapon. Instead, he slid a folded photo onto the table. Ethan's eyes dropped to it, confused, then widened. It was the stranger from the bus stop. Cleaned up, standing beside a sleek office building, flanked by men in
We don't have
suits.
much time.
This
"That's
isn't
him,"
right. I can't
Ethan
just-
said slowly.
You have to. It's the only
The
way.
guy from last night. "Yes," the man replied. "His name is Michael Rowan." The name meant nothing to Ethan. He waited, shoulders tense, palms damp. "He's the founder and CEO of Rowan Capital," the man continued. "One of the largest private investment firms in the state." Ethan let out a short, disbelieving breath. "That's not possible." He was starving. The man nodded. He was testing something. Silence stretched between them. Lily peeked from the hallway, clutching her bear. Ethan motioned her back gently, forcing calm into his voice. Daddy's okay, sweetheart. The suited man lowered his tone. Mr. Rowan does this once a year.
Take it.
No wallet,
You don't have much time.
no
This isn't
phone,
right.
no security.
You have to.
He
It's the
walks
only
the
way.
city to remember what the world feels like without power. Ethan sank into the chair. His legs felt weak. And the money? You gave him your last $18, the man said. He told us everything. About your eyes. About how you didn't hesitate. Ethan laughed once, dry and hollow. I hesitated. But you still gave, the man said. Most don't. He reached into a leather folder and slid over a check. Ethan didn't look at it at first. Mr. Rowan wants to repay you. Ethan shook his head immediately. No, I didn't do it for that. The man smiled faintly. He knows. That's why it's not a handout.
Take it. We don't have
Ethan
much time.
finally
This isn't
glanced
right.
down.
I can't
The
just-
number stole
You
his
have to.
breath.
It's the only way.
It was more money than he had seen in his entire life. This is a mistake, Ethan whispered. It's a grant, the man said, for your daughter's education. And there's more: job placement, housing assistance, medical coverage. Ethan's vision blurred. He pressed his fingers into his eyes, trying to steady himself. Images of overdue bills, of Lily coughing through winter nights because he couldn't afford better heat, flooded his mind. If you were standing where Ethan stood right now, let me ask you something. What would you have done the night before, at that bus stop? Would you have walked past or stopped like he did? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if this moment is already pulling at you,
Take it.
tap
We don't
like
have
to
much
show
time.
that
This isn't
compassion
right.
still
I can't
counts.
just-
Ethan
have
looked
to.
up
It's the only
slowly.
way.
Why me? The man's answer came without hesitation. Because kindness given with nothing left is the rarest kind. The SUVs were gone an hour later. So was the check. Locked carefully in a drawer like it might vanish if he stared too long. Ethan sat on the couch, Lily curled beside him. Daddy, she said quietly. Were those bad guys? He kissed her hair. No, baby. Just surprising ones. That day, Ethan went to work anyway. Muscle memory carried him through the warehouse. Boxes. Beeps. Sweat. But everything felt unreal, like the world had shifted half an inch and nothing quite lined up.
We don't have
On
much
his
time.
break,
This isn't right.
he stared at
I
his
can't
phone,
just-
You have to.
rereading
It's
the
the only
email
way.
Rowan Capital had already sent. Orientation. Benefits. A future that didn't feel like a cliff edge anymore. But relief didn't erase the ache in his chest. Because for the first time in years, Ethan had space to remember how he'd gotten here. Grace Carter had been his anchor, Lily's mother. She used to laugh at his worst jokes and cried during car commercials. When Lily was 2, Grace collapsed at work. Brain aneurysm. Gone before Ethan reached the hospital. After that, life became a tunnel. One paycheck to the next. One promise to Lily after another. Next month, he'd say, soon. Some nights, when Lily slept,
Take it.
Ethan
We
would
don't have
sit
much time.
alone
This isn't
and
right.
whisper
I can't
apologies
just-
to the quiet
You have
house.
to. It's the only way.
Now, opportunity knocked, but guilt followed close behind. That evening, a black sedan, not an SUV this time, pulled into his driveway. Michael Rowan stepped out himself. No suit, just jeans and a jacket. Human. I wanted to thank you in person, Michael said, extending his hand. Ethan shook it, unsure. You didn't have to come. I did, Michael replied, because last night, you reminded me who I was before all of this. They sat on the porch as the sun dipped low. Michael told him about losing his own father young, about building walls instead of bridges, about forgetting hunger until he felt it again. I was hoping someone would see me,
We don't have
Michael
much time.
admitted.
This isn't right.
Most
I
didn't.
can't just-
Ethan
You
looked
have to.
down.
It's the only way.
I just saw a man who needed help. Michael smiled sadly. Exactly. As Michael stood to leave, he paused. There's one more thing, he said. This isn't the end of your story. It's the start of something heavier. Ethan frowned. Heavier. Michael's eyes darkened. Because when good things happen suddenly, the past doesn't always stay quiet. And as the car disappeared down Maple Street, Ethan felt it, that faint tremor of unease. As if the life he thought he was escaping was already reaching back for him. The unease didn't announce itself loudly. It settled in quietly, like dust on a shelf Ethan hadn't checked in years. The new job at Rowan Capital began the following Monday. The building was all glass and steel, sunlight pouring through wide windows that made Ethan feel exposed in his worn jacket. Everyone else seemed to move with purpose, polished shoes clicking confidently across marble floors. He kept his shoulders straight, reminding himself he belonged here, at least on paper. Still, every compliment felt borrowed. "You're doing great," his supervisor Ava said during his first week, smiling as she handed back a report. "You learn fast." Ethan nodded, thanked her, but inside he heard an older voice, the one that always whispered, "Don't get comfortable. This never lasts." At home, Lily noticed the changes first. The fridge was fuller. The heat stayed on all night. Ethan even bought her a new backpack with stars on it. "Are we rich now?" she asked one evening, swinging her legs at the table. Ethan chuckled softly.
"No, sweetheart.
"We're just breathing easier." But some nights, when Lily slept, he stood by the window and watched the street like it might suddenly turn on him. Michael's words echoed in his head. The past doesn't always stay quiet. He understood that better than anyone. Before Grace died, there had been another man in their lives, Caleb Moore. Grace's younger brother. Charismatic, reckless, always chasing the next big idea that never quite worked. Ethan had warned Grace about lending him money, about trusting his promises. Caleb disappeared the week Grace was buried. 3 years later, he resurfaced. Ethan was closing the warehouse one night when he saw him leaning against a truck, smile sharp, eyes calculating. "Ethan Carter," Caleb said. "Heard you landed on your feet." Caleb knew things. About Grace's insurance. About Ethan's debts. About Lily. "I just want what I'm owed," Caleb had said calmly. Ethan paid him then small amounts whenever he could. Out of fear. Out of guilt. Out of wanting to protect Lily from a man who carried chaos like a shadow. But the payments stopped when Ethan had nothing left. And now black SUVs had visited his house. Money had arrived. Opportunity. People like Caleb noticed things like that. The call came on a Thursday night. "Long time," Caleb's voice drawled through the phone. Ethan's blood ran cold. "How did you get this number?"
Caleb laughed.
"Relax. I keep tabs on family." "We're not family," Ethan snapped. A pause. Then softer. "Funny. Grace used to say the same thing right before she trusted me." Ethan's grip tightened. "What do you want?" "I saw the cars," Caleb said. "Saw the new job announcement. Congratulations, man. Truly. Get to the point." "I need help," Caleb replied. "Just a small bridge loan. Temporary." Ethan closed his eyes. He pictured Lily asleep, her slow, even breathing. "I can't," Ethan said. "I'm done." Caleb's tone hardened. "Careful. You've been lucky lately. Would be a shame if that luck turned." The line went dead. Ethan sat there long after, phone pressed to his ear, heart pounding. The room felt smaller, the walls closer. He hadn't told Michael about Caleb. He hadn't told anyone. Some shame felt too heavy to share. The next day at work, Ava noticed his distraction. "You okay?" she asked. Ethan hesitated, then shook his head. "Yeah, just tired." That evening, he drove past the old bus stop without thinking. The streetlights still flickered. The memory of that night rushed back. The hunger, the choice, the stranger's eyes. Have you ever had someone show up for you when you were at your lowest, when no one else would? If yes, write yes and tell me their name below. Sometimes saying it out loud keeps their kindness alive. Ethan parked the car and sat there, hands on the wheel. He realized something then. Help had found him when he wasn't looking for it. But danger had a way of doing the same. The following week, Michael invited Ethan to lunch. They sat in a quiet cafe near the office, sunlight warming the table between them. "You seem distracted lately," Michael said gently. Ethan considered lying, then didn't. "There's someone from my past," he said. "He doesn't like that things are better now." Michael listened without interrupting. When Ethan finished, Michael leaned back, thoughtful. "Money doesn't erase history," Michael said. "It just makes it louder." Ethan nodded. "I don't want this touching my daughter." "It won't," Michael said firmly. But you have to stop carrying this alone. Ethan wanted to believe him. That night, Lily had a fever. Ethan sat by her bed, cool cloth on her forehead, whispering reassurances. As she slept, his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time, there was no voice. Just a photo. Lily's school. Taken that afternoon. Underneath it, one line of text. We need to talk. Ethan's chest tightened, panic rising like a wave. He looked at his daughter, then back at the screen, realizing with terrifying clarity that the price of kindness sometimes came due later, and when it didn't ask permission first. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table until dawn, phone face down, coffee untouched. Every sound outside, the hum of a passing car, a distant dog bark, made his shoulders tense. His eyes kept drifting toward Lily's bedroom door, half expecting it to open, half dreading a knock at the front door instead. By morning, fear had hardened into resolve. He dropped Lily off at school himself, walking her all the way to the gate. She skipped ahead, unaware of the storm tightening inside him. Don't forget I have art today, she said, turning back with a grin. I won't, Ethan replied, forcing a smile. I'll be right here after. As she disappeared into the building, Ethan scanned the street. Nothing looked out of place. Still, his chest stayed tight until he was back in the car, doors locked. At work, he finally told Ava he needed time off. It's personal, he said quietly. She didn't press. Take what you need, she said. Family first. Instead of going home, Ethan drove to an address Caleb texted an hour later. An old storage facility near the edge of town. Rusted gates. Broken windows. The kind of place where secrets felt comfortable. Caleb was waiting, leaning against a pillar, hands in his pockets. He looked older. Harder. But the smile was the same, sharp and self-satisfied. You look good, Ethan, Caleb said. Money suits you. Ethan stepped out of the car, keeping distance between them. You crossed a line. Caleb shrugged. I took a picture. Public place. You scared my daughter. Something flickered in Caleb's eyes. Annoyance, maybe, but not regret. I need cash, Caleb said plainly. And I know you have access now. I don't owe you anything, Ethan replied, voice steady despite the rage burning under his ribs. Caleb stepped closer. You owe Grace. That name hit like a punch. You don't get to use her, Ethan said through clenched teeth. Caleb's smile faded. Then maybe Rowan Capital should know who they hired. About the debts. About the past. There is no past like that, Ethan shot back. Caleb tilted his head. You sure? Because stories can be flexible. Ethan saw it clearly then. This wasn't about money alone. It was about control. About someone who couldn't stand watching another person rise when he hadn't. I'm not giving you anything, Ethan said. And if you come near my daughter again, I go to the police. Caleb laughed, but there was tension in it now. You really think they'll believe you over me? Ethan didn't answer. He turned and walked back to his car, legs shaking, heart pounding. He didn't look back. The moment he was inside, he called Michael. They met that evening, not at an office or cafe, but at Ethan's house. Lily was at a neighbor's painting. The living room felt small but safe, light spilling across the floor. Michael listened carefully as Ethan explained everything. The warehouse days, the payments, the threats, the photo. When Ethan finished, his voice broke. I thought if I stayed quiet, it would go away. Michael nodded slowly. That's what fear teaches us. Silence feels safer. So, what do I do? Ethan asked. Michael leaned forward. You protect your daughter. And you stop letting shame make decisions for you. They contacted legal counsel that night. Filed a report. Documented everything. For the first time, Ethan felt something shift. Not relief, not yet, but movement. As Michael stood to leave, he placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. You did the right thing again, he said, even when it was hard. After he left, Ethan sat alone in the quiet house. The fear was still there, but it no longer owned him completely. Now it's your turn. Pause for a moment and think. What's one small good thing you've done recently, even when it cost you something? Share it below. Someone reading might need that reminder tonight more than you know. The next few days were tense but quiet. No messages. No sightings. Lily laughed again, her fever gone, her world still simple and bright. Then, on Friday afternoon, Ethan got a call from an unknown number. "This is Detective Harris," a calm voice said. "We'd like to speak with you regarding Caleb Moore." Ethan's breath caught. "Is my daughter?" "She's safe," the detective said quickly. "But there's something you should know." Ethan listened, heart racing, as the detective explained. Caleb had been involved in other cases, other threats, other victims. Someone else had finally spoken up too. "You coming forward helped," the detective said. "More than you realize." When the call ended, Ethan sat in the car, hands trembling, not from fear this time, but from the weight of what could have happened if he'd stayed silent. That night, as he tucked Lily into bed, she wrapped her arms around his neck. "You're my hero," she whispered sleepily. Ethan closed his eyes, holding her a second longer than usual, knowing the danger wasn't fully gone, but also knowing something important had changed. The past had tried to drag him back. This time, it hadn't won. And as the house settled into quiet, Ethan sensed that the hardest moment was still ahead, not in fear, but in a choice that would test how much forgiveness his heart could truly hold. The arrest made the local news, but Ethan didn't watch it. He didn't need to see Caleb's face on a screen, framed by flashing lights and whispered speculation. He already knew every line in that face, the charm, the bitterness, the hunger that never seemed satisfied. What he did feel was the silence that followed. No more late-night calls. No more shadows stretching too long behind him. The world didn't suddenly become perfect, but it loosened its grip on his throat. For the first time in years, Ethan slept through the night without jolting awake at imagined sounds. A week later, Michael invited him to a small gathering at Rowan Capital. Nothing flashy. Just a few people, quiet conversations, soft music. Ethan almost declined. Crowds still made him uneasy. But Lily insisted. "You should go," she said, serious in the way only children could be. "You worked really hard." So he went. As Ethan stood near the window, holding a glass of water, he noticed something strange. People weren't looking at him with curiosity anymore. They were looking with respect. Ava introduced him to colleagues not as the new guy, but as someone whose insight mattered. "You changed how we see things around here," one executive told him. "Michael talks about you often." Ethan smiled politely, but inside, his thoughts drifted back to the bus stop. To the rain. To $18 that had felt like everything. Later that night, Michael found him standing alone on the balcony. "You okay?" Michael asked. Ethan nodded. "Just thinking." Michael leaned against the railing beside him. "About how close I came to losing everything," Ethan said quietly. "And how strange it is that it all started because I almost said no." Michael looked out over the city lights. "That's usually where the real story is," he said. "In the almosts." There was a pause. Then Michael added, "Caleb reached out to me through his lawyer." Ethan stiffened. "What does he want?" Michael studied Ethan carefully. "He wants to apologize."
To you.
The word hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. Ethan laughed once, sharply. "That's new." "He says losing his freedom forced him to see things clearly," Michael said. He asked if you'd be willing to hear him out. Ethan's chest tightened. Anger flared first, hot, familiar. Then fear. Then something else he hadn't expected. Exhaustion. "I don't owe him my time," Ethan said. "No," Michael agreed. "You don't. This isn't about what he deserves. It's about what you need." That night, Ethan sat alone again at the kitchen table, but this time the silence felt different. Less threatening. More honest. He thought of Grace. Of how she used to believe people could change, even when it hurt her. He thought of Lily, asleep down the hall, growing up in a world that would teach her both cruelty and compassion. And he thought of himself, of the man he'd been when he handed over that last $18, not knowing what would come next. 2 days later, Ethan agreed to the meeting. The visitation room was plain. Cold. Caleb looked smaller behind the glass, jumpsuit dull against his skin. The sharp smile was gone. "Ethan," Caleb said, voice rough. "Thank you for coming." Ethan didn't sit right away. He stood there, arms crossed, grounding himself. "I'm not here for you," Ethan said. "I'm here, so this doesn't follow me anymore." Caleb nodded slowly. "I know. I ruined a lot of things. I used Grace's memory, like a weapon. That's on me." Ethan felt the anger rise again, but it didn't control him this time. "You scared my daughter," Ethan said quietly. "That's something I'll never forget." Caleb's eyes filled. "I know, and I'll live with that." There were no excuses. No justifications. Just a broken man sitting with the weight of his choices. When Ethan finally sat down, he surprised himself. "I don't forgive you today," he said honestly. "Maybe not tomorrow either." Caleb swallowed. "I understand. But I won't carry you anymore," Ethan continued. "That ends here." Caleb nodded, tears falling freely now. "That's more than I deserve." As Ethan stood to leave, he felt lighter, not because the past was erased, but because it no longer defined his steps. If that moment stirred something deep in you, leave a red heart below. Some emotions are too heavy for words, and that small sign can say everything. Outside, the sky was clear. Ethan breathed in deeply, realizing forgiveness wasn't a single act, it was a direction, one he could choose when he was ready. And as he drove home, he felt it clearly for the first time. The storm had passed. What remained was the quiet work of rebuilding, of choosing hope again, even when scars still ached, and knowing the final test of his heart was just ahead. The weeks that followed felt almost gentle. Not perfect, never that, but softer around the edges. Ethan settled into his role at Rowan Capital, no longer flinching when his name was called in meetings.
He spoke more.
Listened better. Ava noticed the change. "You're different lately," she said one afternoon as they walked out together. "Lighter."
Ethan thought about that.
"I think I finally stopped running," he replied. At home, Lily thrived in ways that surprised him. She laughed louder, slept deeper. One evening, she came home waving a permission slip. "There's a school trip," she said excitedly. "Overnight." Ethan hesitated only a second before smiling. "Let's do it." That moment, so small, so ordinary, hit him harder than any check or promotion. He could finally say yes without fear clawing at the answer. Still, peace has a way of being tested. One evening, Michael called. "I want to tell you something before you hear it elsewhere," he said. Ethan's stomach tightened. "Okay." Caleb's lawyer reached out again. He's willing to testify against others he's been involved with. In exchange, there's a chance his sentence could be reduced. Ethan closed his eyes slowly. "And," he asked, "and they'll want a statement from you. About impact. About forgiveness." Silence stretched between them. Michael didn't rush him. "You don't have to do anything," he added. "I'll support whatever you choose." After the call ended, Ethan sat on the porch long after the sun disappeared. The street was quiet, familiar, safe. But inside him, something twisted. Forgiveness wasn't abstract anymore. It was paperwork. Courtrooms. Words that could change another man's future. That night, Ethan dreamed of Grace. She stood across the room, not speaking, just watching him with that same gentle sadness she used to have when he was stubborn. When he woke, his chest ached. The next day, Ethan visited the cemetery for the first time in years. Lily stayed with a neighbor. This was something he needed to face alone. He knelt by the stone, tracing Grace's name with his fingers. "I did my best," he whispered. "I hope that was enough." The wind moved softly through the trees. No answers came. Just space. Days passed. The deadline for the statement approached. Ethan avoided the decision until he couldn't. On the night before it was due, Lily found him staring at a blank document on his laptop. "You look sad," she said gently, climbing into his lap. He kissed her temple. "Just thinking about grown-up stuff." She considered that. "Is it about being mad?" Ethan blinked. "Why do you ask?" "Because my teacher says holding anger is like squeezing a rock," Lily said thoughtfully. "Your hand gets tired, but the rock doesn't care." Ethan felt his throat tighten. Sometimes, Lily continued, letting go doesn't mean what happened was okay. It just means you want your hand back. She yawned, curling against him, already drifting toward sleep. Ethan held her, stunned by the quiet wisdom resting against his chest. Later that night, alone again, he stared at the screen. Could he forgive a man who used fear as leverage? Who dragged his past through the dirt? Who terrified his child? Could he let go without betraying grace, without weakening the walls he'd built to survive? Be honest. If someone hurt you the way Ethan was hurt, could you forgive? Type forgive if you believe you could, or never if that wound would cut too deep. There's no right answer, only truth. Ethan's fingers hovered over the keys. Finally, he began to type. He didn't excuse Caleb's actions. He didn't soften the harm. He wrote clearly, firmly, about the fear, the sleepless nights, the weight of protecting a child alone. And then, at the end, he wrote something that surprised even him. I don't forgive him because he asked. I forgive him because I refuse to let what he did shape who I become. Ethan sent the statement before he could second-guess himself. The next morning, the sun rose like it always had. No thunder. No sign from the universe. Just quiet. At work, Michael stopped by his desk. I read it, he said softly. That took courage. Ethan exhaled. It felt like setting something down I've been carrying for years. Michael nodded. That's usually what forgiveness is. Weeks later, the court decision came. Caleb's sentence was reduced, but not erased. Accountability remained. When Ethan heard the news, he didn't feel victory. He felt release. That evening, he picked Lily up from school early and took her for ice cream. They sat on a bench, sticky fingers and laughter mixing with the late afternoon sun. You're smiling, Lily said. Ethan smiled wider. I am. Because for the first time, the past no longer stood between him and the future. And as the sky shifted colors above them, Ethan sensed it, the final turn of the story approaching. Not with pain, but with something brighter. Hope, finally ready to stay. Autumn arrived gently that year. The trees along Maple Street shifted from green to gold, and the air carried that quiet promise of change. Cooler mornings, softer light, slower evenings. Ethan noticed things like that now. He wasn't rushing through life anymore. He was living inside it. Lily's school trip came and went without incident. She returned with stories that tumbled out all at once. Campfire songs, whispered jokes, a teacher who snored too loudly. You would have laughed so hard, she said, eyes bright. I'm just glad you had fun, Ethan replied, meaning more than she knew. At work, Ethan was offered a permanent position. Not just stability, growth. A future that stretched farther than survival. When Ava handed him the contract, she smiled. You earned this, she said simply. That night, Ethan didn't celebrate with anything grand. He cooked dinner. Helped Lily with homework. Fixed the loose hinge on the front door. Ordinary things that once felt impossible. Later, after Lily fell asleep, Ethan stepped outside onto the porch. The street was quiet. Peaceful. The same street where fear once lived. His phone buzzed. A message from Michael. I wanted you to know, your story inspired something here. The following week, Michael invited Ethan to a small meeting. No executives. No press. Just a handful of people sitting in a circle. We're starting a foundation, Michael said. Quiet acts. No cameras. No names. Just help, given when it's needed most. He looked directly at Ethan. I want you to help lead it. Ethan's breath caught. Me? You reminded us what impact really looks like, Michael replied. One choice. One moment. Ethan didn't answer right away. His mind flashed back to the bus stop. The rain. The strangers shaking hands. I'm not special, Ethan said finally. Michael smiled. Neither was I that night. That's the point. The foundation began small. Grocery cards. Rent assistance. Quiet support given without conditions. Ethan volunteered on weekends, sometimes bringing Lily along when it felt right. One afternoon, Lily watched as a woman with tired eyes accepted help, tears spilling freely. Why is she crying? Lily whispered. Ethan knelt beside her. Because sometimes being seen hurts and heals at the same time. On the drive home, Lily stared out the window, thoughtful. I want to help people when I grow up, she said. Ethan smiled. You already are. The holidays came. For the first time since Grace died, Ethan felt warmth without guilt. They visited the cemetery together, leaving flowers. Lily held his hand. Mom would like this, she said softly. I think so too, Ethan replied, voice steady. That night, as they decorated a small tree, Ethan felt something settle in his chest. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of meaning. Life hadn't erased his scars. It had woven them into something stronger. Weeks later, Ethan received a letter from the prison. Caleb's handwriting was shaky. I don't expect forgiveness, it read. But your words changed how I see myself. I'm trying to be better than the man I was. Ethan folded the letter carefully. He didn't feel anger. He didn't feel pride. He felt closure. One evening, as winter lights flickered on across the neighborhood, Ethan and Lily stood at the window. Daddy, Lily asked, why did you help that man at the bus stop? Ethan thought for a moment, then answered honestly, because I hoped someone would help me too, if I ever needed it. Lily nodded like that made perfect sense. And maybe it did. If you still believe, after everything, that love can win, even quietly, commentamen. Let's fill this space with hope. Someone scrolling right now might need to see that light more than we know. As the year turned, Ethan realized something profound. The miracle wasn't the money. It wasn't the job. It wasn't even the redemption. The miracle was that kindness had survived inside him when life had every reason to crush it. And because it did, it kept moving. From one man, to a daughter, to strangers who would never know his name. The story that began with $18 had become something far larger. And as Ethan tucked Lily into bed one quiet night, he understood. The ending wasn't an ending at all. It was an open door, leading somewhere warm, somewhere worth walking toward. The first snowfall came quietly, just after midnight. Ethan noticed it when he woke to Lily pressing her nose against the window, her breath fogging the glass. Outside, Maple Street was transformed, soft white layers covering sidewalks, cars, the familiar cracks in the road that once felt like fault lines in his life. It's beautiful, Lily whispered, as if afraid to scare it away. Ethan wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Yeah, he said softly. It really is. They stood there for a long moment, watching the world slow down. Later that morning, Ethan drove to the Foundation's storage space. A shipment had arrived overnight. Coats, blankets, food kits. Nothing flashy. Just warmth, packaged in quiet boxes. As he carried them inside, he thought about how strange life was. How one choice, made in exhaustion and doubt, could ripple outward in ways you'd never fully see. That afternoon, a young father came in with his son. The boy clutched a toy car, missing one wheel. The father looked embarrassed, shoulders hunched, voice low. I heard you might help, he said. Ethan nodded, no questions asked. As he handed over a box, their eyes met, just for a second. Recognition passed between them. Not because they knew each other, but because they shared the same invisible weight. When the man left, Lily tugged at Ethan's sleeve. He looked like you, she said. Ethan smiled faintly. I know. That night, after Lily was asleep, Ethan sat alone by the window again, just like he had months ago. But the feeling was different now. The quiet didn't scare him. It held him. His phone buzzed. A message from Michael. You changed more lives than you'll ever know, including mine. Ethan set the phone down and leaned back, eyes closing. His thoughts drifted. Not to fear, not to loss, but to grace. To how she would have smiled at Lily's laugh. To how she always believed the smallest kindness mattered most. He whispered into the stillness, I hope I made you proud. In the days that followed, life continued. Bills still came. Work still demanded focus. Some mornings were harder than others. Healing, he'd learned, wasn't a straight line. But the difference now was simple. He wasn't alone. On the anniversary of that rainy night, Ethan drove past the bus stop again. The streetlight had been replaced.
Bright. Steady.
He parked for a moment, snow crunching under his shoes as he stepped out. He stood there, hands in his pockets, remembering the hunger, the doubt, the fear of having nothing left. And then he smiled, because he understood something now that he hadn't back then. Giving his last $18 hadn't made him poor. It had revealed who he already was. A man who chose compassion when it hurt. A father who protected his child not just with fear, but with courage. A human being who refused to let the world harden him. Before you leave this story behind, pause with me for a second. If this journey moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for a channel, not for a video, but for the soul who carried pain, chose kindness anyway, and kept going. One small click can be your way of saying, I felt this. The snow kept falling outside, covering old footprints, softening sharp edges. Ethan turned off the light and went to bed, knowing tomorrow would bring its own challenges. But also knowing this, hope doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it comes disguised as a stranger in the rain, asking for help and reminding us who we are when we think we have nothing left. And that quiet truth, that kindness survives, even here, was more than enough.